Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Action.
Welcome into Guerilla Sports Off Ice, our Halloween edition episode. Jesse Montano, an angel, and Deion Sanders here to break all things down. Coach Prime, you can call me.
Meghan Angley.
Did you do that on purpose?
No, but I hope people call me that from now on.
And then Jesse Montano.
Okay. I was already at work. I was already at the office by the time these two yahoos even pulled themselves out of bed and were like, oh, we should dress up. We should dress up. And so I was like, guys, I'm already here. And JJ said, fuck you. That was what it said in the text. I have it. I can show it.
I actually woke up like this. I don't know what you're talking about.
Just levitated out of bed right to the studio.
I have to take this off before I go to the rink.
I've actually been basically putting this outfit on when I'm watching every CU game at home.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, well, I'm just gonna do it for the Halloween episode.
I love it. Is this the last episode before Halloween?
Yeah.
Fuck. I should have put the gorilla suit on.
Yeah, you should have.
You can wear it to the game.
I could wear it to the game.
Can you imagine trying to do a serious interview with Nathan McKinnon and you're just wearing a gorilla suit?
Like, would they let us in if we had a costume
I doubt
on?
it.
I
doubt it,
think
but
they would.
some of the things some people be wearing, apparently there are no rules.
I'm trying to think of the way that I feel like if they knew that it was us, they'd let us like into the locker room for morning skate. They're like, yeah, you can't ask him questions wearing that. You can stand in here because we know you, but
I'd love to see just a gorilla hand holding the mic.
And the mic's dressed like a banana.
yeah. Those are one of those instances where you get caught like having to ask a completely serious question while wearing the gorilla suit. That injury, it's pretty gruesome. How do you cope with that?
That just adds to the hilarity of it, though. But anyway, thanks everybody for joining us today. Having a little fun. It's been a while since it's been all three of us.
True.
So it's good to see both of you guys here.
Good to see you, Prime.
Thank you. Yeah, let's get into the game a little bit, and then we're going to dissect the last 10 games, as Jared Bednar likes to do, break it down into 10 game segments. We're going to look into that first 10 games here.
So what did you say about 90? I thought you said 90-second segments for some reason. I was like,
I don't think I said anything about 90.
All right, perfect.
Jesse Montano in full costume today.
Hey,
in full character even.
Stop.
Yeah, let's get into that game a little bit from last night. A huge disappointment of a loss. Back-to-back, sure, you could get some excuses. But just a slow start from the Avalanche, and not what you want on the second night of a back-to-back is a slow start, and they were never able to overcome that start. But I think you saw a little bit of progress throughout the game. Overall thoughts on last night?
It was disappointing. It was to me, it felt like a real dud of a game after 5 games where they were not only winning, but in my opinion, continuing to get better and building on things. And you had strong goaltending in net. And even with the depleted lineup, you felt really good about where you were at. Last night, it just really felt like I didn't think anything was like horrific, but it was just all not what you needed, not what you wanted. The effort I thought was lacking. They looked tired. They got hemmed in their own zone a lot. And then I'm sure we're going to talk about goaltending, but like, was Georgie the reason they lost that game? No. Was he as good as they needed him to be? Absolutely not.
I think I see it very similarly just on the goaltending side. He's not the reason they lost, but he's not the reason that they won. He didn't give them that chance to win. They still, I think he could have been one save better, but they still would have needed a little bit more from him and themselves. So what I think I don't like about how they started this game is I don't feel they respected Chicago enough. This is a Chicago team that has been desperate in search of a win to snap their own losing streak, coming in fresh and rested. And I just don't think there was enough respect in the opening frame that they needed to come even more ready for the drop of the puck, because that's, Chicago's number one strategy going into Ball Arena for the Avs second leg of a back-to-back. Get at them early and capitalize on the fact that there's probably some fatigue. So the fact that the Avs just didn't seem to brace themselves for that a little more readily by coming as hungry as they could in the opening period when they likely had the most energy of all, I think was a little disappointing. I think there were things I saw them trying to do earlier in the game to create offense that also kind of suggested, I don't know if you're taking this seriously enough. The things that you're trying are a little audacious, which I think is bold and a little bit fun, but it's not working for a reason, because I think it's almost insulting to what they thought of Chicago. And I think Chicago capitalized on that. And then, later in the game, particularly the third period, I think they started to figure it out a little bit more, but they strayed from some of the things that have brought them success. And then not having Ross Colton, leaving the game just made already tired legs more tired. They had absorbed more minutes. And I think that's where things started to catch up with them in an insurmountable way.
Yeah, I think Megan says a lot of good things there. Chicago came into this pissed off. I think their last game, they pissed away a lead against Nashville, and they were at home. So, that one really shook them. And then Peter Mrazek, he always seems to come into Ball Arena and have a fantastic night.
He has two gears when he plays against the Avs: stand on his head or absolutely horrible, and stood on his head last night.
He has a 9.22 career against the Avalanche. So he brings it.
Mm-hmm.
I think you see Peter Mrazek on the little depth chart that they put in the locker room, and you got to think, okay, we better get some pucks on net.
Mm-hmm.
We got to make this dangerous, and we have to really test him, because he's even come in here with some bad teams and
almost
beats the
exclusively.
Yeah. I don't like the way they started the game, but I guess I want to gear the conversation towards why were they so tired? Yes, it's a back-to-back. Yes, it's the NHL. You give a lot of effort, but it's not like a back-to-back is a new thing in the NHL.
No.
I guess I'm kind of questioning the fitness. I'm questioning the usage from Coach Bednar. He uses the top guys a little bit too much at times, and it's nights like last night that you kind of see it bite you in the ass a little bit.
I don't know. I'll push back on that a bit. One, because I do feel like this has been an above average busy schedule to start the season, especially if you look back at the last handful of seasons, under this, the Jared Bednar era. There's been 3, if not 4 seasons where they either participated in a global series or were scheduled to participate in a global series and, were ended up not going, but were scheduled appropriately. The beginnings of seasons for the Avs, they're typically well behind in games. They got several games in hand, days off, practice days. For a little bit over a month now, it's already gotten to, or I guess not over a month, but right, this first month, we're heading into November, and it does not slow down anytime soon. We're every other day. We are every other day for this team right now. And they're practicing on some days, not on others. They're playing a lot of hockey out of the gate early. And then, so I think that adds to a little bit of the fatigue going into that first back-to-back. But where I'll push back on the usages, and I know we're going to talk about injuries.
You have to do what you have to do.
What else do you do? You know what I mean? Matt Steinberg, I think, has been really good. He's someone that I'm going to talk a little bit about later, but you're in close games, and especially with Ross Colton going down last night, the Avs are going to drop the puck with Tampa tomorrow with $30 million missing out of their lineup. You just, in order to stay competitive in some of these games, they're having to use those top guys a lot. It's not ideal. Absolutely. You're right. But given what the schedule is and the injuries, the usage is just going to be what it is for a while.
I also feel like the fatigue seemed to be more mental fatigue. It felt like execution, finishing issues, and decision-making issues in their own end, just in terms of puck management. And so I think some of that is probably also real physical fatigue, but I won't panic about the conditioning of this team at this point just because I felt like a lot of the mistakes were kind of mental sloppy ones, and that's what I'd like to see them clean up, believe that they can. And I look at the Ottawa game from the night before and just wonder the lasting impact that had just because it was so high event in the third period that that one ended kind of described as a late one for the Avs just in terms of exertion. So I think there was some carryover that we were seeing in the Chicago game.
Yeah, I think you're right. Jared Bednar loves to fight for every single win, and in doing so, he has to put his top guys out there. Sometimes the minutes do pile up, and I think he's even addressed it in the past and saying, yeah, maybe I do have to be a little bit better about that. But right now, he's kind of handcuffed, and like, this now's not the time I can be better about that.
Well, and to your point of like he likes to try to stack wins, that's absolutely true. And the Avs are also in survival mode. Like they are just trying to collect as many points as they can while they're going through all of this. And so, you are just at a point where you are thinking the schedule will get easier. Even though you're going to have your top guys playing in the Four Nations tournament, that schedule isn't going to be anywhere near as grueling. Still going to be a long break. Like, I think Jared Bednar saying, like, I'm getting reinforcements and I'm going to get schedule help in the back half of the season. If we got to ride these guys right now to keep our head above water, I want to make sure that remains clear in everyone's head. That is the goal until Christmas. Stay in it. Stay in the fight. Stay hanging around near the top three of your division. Stay in a wild card spot, and you'll get your reinforcements back, and it'll be able to move the needle for you. And I do just think that that's reality of it. To me, last night, it looked like an engagement issue, not even maybe they looked a little bit tired on the back-to-back, but to me that there was engagement problems last night, not these guys are too worn down.
Well, and Monday night, they really had to fight for that victory late in the game too, right? So I think that's a factor that takes a toll. And I think the mental exhaustion, as Megan pointed out, is probably a bigger deal than the physical exhaustion. I think she's spot on that. Today, I think, is supposed to be the day that Arturi Lehkonen goes for his check-in.
Is it the 29th?
Yep.
Sure is.
So is that a guy we can anticipate in the lineup tomorrow?
Doesn't it sure feel that way?
Yeah.
We joked about the pink jersey, but then he actually stopped wearing a red no contact jersey. So somewhere in the middle, I think we were right about him feeling well enough to play, but needing to tick off some checkpoints first. And it has just felt like he's so ready to get back in there.
What a responsible move from the team, though, right? I think if it was up to Arturi Lehkonen, he was in the lineup 2-3 weeks ago, but they said we got to wait till we get cleared from the doctor. As much as we want you back, as much as we need you back right now, we're going to wait for medical clearance.
And I think that's exactly what it is. Like, I think his refusal to wear the red jersey isn't just him being funny, quirky, Lecky. Like, I think he's like, no, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to play. But I'm with you. Like, you've come this far with all of this stuff. What is one more game? What is one more week? Like, make sure that these guys are right and healthy. Especially because, like, you've got guys dropping out of the lineup every day right now. You don't need to rush somebody back just to see them get hurt again and be out even longer.
Ross Colton, let's get into that a little bit. Obviously, not what you want to see when the team is as decimated as it is right now. Blocks a shot. You like to see that effort. You like to see the heart there. But don't turn your foot like that. Why are you blocking the shot with the side of your foot? Stinks to see Ross Colton out. It's probably going to be a little while before we see him again.
Yeah. Saw him getting checked out last night, and then we see him leaving in a boot. A lot of ice on the foot. It's a bummer because he tried to play through it. And, I think you're thinking, and what they're probably hoping is to beat deep bruise, hurts to put pressure on, hurts to put weight on, get him in that walking boot for a little while, a couple weeks, and he's good to go. But man, what a disappointment. Playing so well.
Especially with the way he's been playing. Exactly. I mean, he's been kind of our biggest talking point, our biggest surprise, at least up until now. So yeah, to see him try to tough it out, he probably got in the dressing room, took off the skate, and couldn't put it back on. So it's not the best of news. I think it is going to be a couple weeks, but it's kind of a huge hit as far as the offense goes right now.
It is huge. He was such an important piece in their power play and the success that it was having. We have our little notes to assess the 10-game segment, so I'll give you a glimpse ahead into mine, but the power play is one of the strengths of this 10-game segment, and some of it has been largely through Ross Colton. The accuracy for power play goals, it's among the league most, tied for the league most from Ross Colton. And the people that he's had supporting him there with Rantanen and McKinnon have helped too, but it's the other things, like seeing him blocking shots. Of the forwards, he leads the team in block shots, tied with Parker Kelly for a reason too. That's just a part of his game he's never shied away from, and it stinks to see him pay that kind of price because he's been playing so well. And I think it also points to the realities around this team being a little banged up generally. We had the scare in the Utah game with Ross Colton already, but Miles Wood also dinged up in that game, has not quite looked great. And I want to say the practice where Taves took a maintenance day and then he was missing some time after that, I think Miles Wood also was a maintenance guy at that time. I think there have been behind the scenes injuries that have been troubling those guys. Ross Colton's not being one. We can point to exactly what happened here, but I think guys have been playing through some things, and for Ross Colton, it caught up to him in a way that he really needs to take some time off and rest for a little bit.
Yeah, that's all we have on Ross Colton. I mean,
it's just really tough when your next man up guys start going down. Like that's the part that Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Devon Taves are still in your lineup, so you have a chance every single night. But they were reaching so far into that bag of depth to help prop up the guys at the top and the power play, and it was remaining effective. And now, like, it's not just that you're missing Ross Colton off the top power play unit. Last night, the second power play unit featured 2 defensemen and Miles Wood. Like, Miles Wood is probably your next, him or a Logan O'Connor. No bullshit. He was the extra attacker at one point last night. Kiviranta.
He's gotten on PP2 in spots too, which is a little scary to think about.
Right. And so, like, this is the territory that you're now suddenly into, talking about your first power play unit. And, when we start talking about usage, this is where it really starts to impact. Okay, so there's your first power play unit. You just had to pull someone from your second unit who probably already wouldn't have been there, would not have been on any type of special teams unit. Now you're pulling that person to a top power play unit, and who fills in behind that? So now suddenly, again, I'm not trying to take shots at Matt Steinberg or anything like that, but like, okay, so now Matt Steinberg is your bumper guy on PP2. How much more likely does that make it that power play 1 is just going to play the entire 2 minutes? And, maybe it's Ivan who slides up, who has scored a goal right there already in that spot. But my point is, like, you're reaching further into your depth to replace your injured depth. And that's the part where it's really a problem. Like, you're already missing your top guys. So none of the guys that you're losing are going to be as impactful as Val or Lucky or Gabe or Drouin or whatever. But it's just like, okay, how deep can we reach into this bag before it's like, yeah, this is an AHL team with Nathan McKinnon? Because it feels like we're getting to that point. Can we put -1 on that board over there?
I don't think that's how it works.
It doesn't feel that way though. Like, they're battling through things behind the scenes. And now obviously Ross Colton's verifiably injured. It just feels like it has been, I don't know the word I'm looking for, like a backwards battle from the start of the season. Like
Mhm.
a guy gets healthy and someone else leaves the lineup.
I can't help but draw the parallel to the Cup team and how it was all year long. Somebody was out. Obviously not to this magnitude. There wasn't this many guys out, but when they finally were able to get a healthy team, man, they were unstoppable. That's kind of what feels like the situation is here, if they can ever get a healthy team.
Well, and doesn't it feel like a lot of teams deal with injuries, but my goodness, does it just feel like the Avs deal with injuries at the top of their lineup more so than, and again, this is definitely a confirmation bias thing that I'm about to say, but like more than any other team, it feels like the Avs lose top players, not just like, oh, they're dealing with a lot of injuries. It's like, nope, it's some of the most key guys in their lineup. Again, add Ross Colton to this list. The Avs are like out of defensive-minded forwards.
Logan O'Connor would like a word.
And you're 100% right. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see him get top line, top six looks. Kovalenko's a young player who I think is trying to fill that type of role. I think Ivan is an interesting young player who has a decent 200-foot game. But like you just start going like Landeskog is kind of the asterisk one. But again, the best defensive forward for that top line. He goes down. So you slide in Val Nichushkin, emerges in one of the top defensive forwards in the NHL. He goes down. Well, no worries. We got Lehkonen, who's like this secret weapon, one of the best forecheckers in the league, one of our best defensive forward. He goes down. Jonathan Drouin, whose 200-foot game took massive strides last year and was such a responsible player in that top six. He goes down. Now you're talking about Ross Colton. Wow, he's jumped up in the lineup, filled in so great, really been that, bull in a china shop, playing heavy along the wall, playing all 200 feet. Now he goes down. And it's like, okay, this team is built around being a strong defensive team top to bottom. Their forwards chip in and get back. There's strong defensive-minded forwards on every line, if not multiple, and it's gone. Like, that's the part that's crazy to me, is like hockey Jesus is like, well, let's see how good defensively you really are.
Well, and then you could even throw in a couple of those goals from Chicago last night. Very unlucky goals. It's like, man, things are getting spooky around the Avalanche at Halloween time right now.
And that's why I'm just saying, like, to me, it's funny. We're doing our media pressers after games, and on that 5-game win streak, much quieter, way fewer questions, way fewer comments. We see a loss fall last night. And again, people are hitting the panic button and all that. And look, I'm never telling anyone how to be a fan. You be a fan however you want. But for me, I would tell everyone, like, readjust your expectations for right now. The goal is keep your head above water, not to surge to the top of the division. It's can you stay in the hunt with these types of injuries? And if they can do that, it's an overwhelming success to start the season. If they can just keep themselves in it long enough for them to start getting some bodies back.
Well, and when we went through the 4-game losing streak to start the season, I said to both of you guys, there's a good chance that they come out of this at 6-4. And you even said 5-5 would even be great. Well, here we are at 5-5. I think, you can kind of start fresh right in the middle of the Central Division. There's 3 teams below them, 3 teams above them, and then they're tied with the Blues in points right now, right in the middle. Right, so yeah, I think it's been okay. Everything is fine. Their head is exactly at water right now.
You don't think it's been fine?
No, I don't think everything is fine.
Oh, all right.
Because of how many guys are missing. Like what you're talking about, the effects of losing so many defensive-minded forwards are hurting this team. And this isn't devil's advocate for the goaltending conversation, but one of my notes for analysis of the 10-game segment are the issues they've had in their own end: turnover, breakout issues, poor puck management. They're 8th in the league in high danger chances allowed, 2nd in the league in D-zone giveaways, 6th in the league in giveaways generally. The failed breakout led to so many neutral zone turnovers against Chicago last night.
Last night in
particular, missed coverage, failed clears in critical moments, going back to Islanders game, Columbus game. This has hurt them, and it's hurt their PK. The PK is 29th in the league right now, and that's a symptom of the larger problem, which is missing these key players that are defensive-minded in their forward group. And until they start getting some reinforcement, this will continue to be a struggle. Even Cale Makar has had some pretty tough games recently, and I think that's where the back end starts to try to absorb some of that loss on behalf of the forward group, just because they're trying to overcompensate for some of those absences. And that's why I think we see some of the mistakes that we've seen from a Makar. Gerard, as of recently, who has been one of the better defensemen on the PK specifically, but had a tough game last night. Similar with Makar. I'm trying to think back. I want to say it was the Boston game that was particularly tough for him. It
was Isles.
Isles. Okay.
Game, yeah. Well, that was the one where he said I was terrible.
Yes.
I got to be better. That was the.
That's
Islanders
the one
game.
I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that was.
Players who are typically I thought Gerard took huge strides last year, but I'm already seeing people say that he needs to be traded. I don't feel that way. I think that these are all symptoms of the larger problem, which is how these absences are really hurting a team whose identity is usually better about these types of things. Logan O'Connor talked about how they weren't heavy on the forecheck last night, and it's a staple of their game. And a lot of it, starts in their own end too. But I think it's leading to some of the issues that we're seeing with creation. This has been a team that has routinely outshot their opponent, but has had some struggles with execution and finish. And I just think that this is all the price that they're paying for some of these absences that shouldn't be ignored. I have separate critiques for the goaltending that are unrelated to this. And so this doesn't excuse what I have seen from goaltending. It's just important context to sort of add there. But it's not been a great PK, and in their own end, they've not been very good. A lot of rush attempts allowed too, so that kind of coverage has also been a struggle for them. I wasn't able to get a number for the rush attempts allowed, so if you guys know of a site that offers that, I really want to find one.
I was actually having that exact conversation with Corey last night.
I was all over the internet today, I want a hard number.
So, and man, because I agree with everything you just said. I think that was outstanding analysis of what we've seen here early on. But for me, that's why I do think sitting at 5-5 is fine for everything you just said.
I'm fine with the record, but I'm scared with what it means for, tomorrow,
And it's here is the second part of it too. Even with everything you just said, the effort has to be better tomorrow. That was my number one issue with last night, was there's a lot of stuff that we can put in that I think are legitimate points of context. People will call them excuses if you want. There's legitimate context to what's happening here. To me, last night, a lot of my issues had nothing to do with that stuff. I think there's a lot of things that you can say, as Megan just very eloquently pointed out, these defensive struggles, it's not a giant mystery why they look like a mess in their own end. There's hard things that we can point to. My issue last night was the commitment level. There were just too many shifts where they were just literally chasing the puck around their own end. And it's what are you doing? This is, one of the things I'm going to talk about is systematic structure, because I think that's been part of what has helped them, one, rattle off 5 straight wins, but two, that's the hallmark of this team. We will play to our identity better than anyone. And that was something that I was watching that last night. And it's you can play to your identity even without a full roster. And that's not what this is.
It's so much the way too that they are designed to defend in their own end is to collapse. And so there is usually supposed to be some kind of support defensively. And it's not just one individual's assignment. There's usually somebody else that is supposed to offer support in different situations. And I think that's where the lack of body's familiarity with the system has led to guys trying to defend on their own on an individual basis. And that's where we see the mistakes like the Donato goal with, Makar. He's a failed clear, losing his stick, not covering the net front very well because he doesn't have a stick. Gerard's there too. I'm not quite sure what he's doing either. That kind of confusion from those guys who are familiar is unusual. And I think it just comes from guys straying from utilizing their teammates to collapse in how they defend and trying to do everything themselves. And I think that's where a lot of mistakes are getting made structurally.
Yeah, I think a lot of defensive mistakes too. I think the opponents are getting into the zone and scoring pretty quickly after that. So they kind of have to figure out a way how to stop that bleeding.
Right. Defend the blue line better, make it harder for them to even enter. I think that's where I've seen some confusing entries that have been allowed. There are guys at the blue line there that don't physically engage. They decide to chase instead. I don't fully understand that decision instead of playing the body. it's a perfectly acceptable opportunity. I'm not sure exactly what the instruction is there if I'm not understanding that play correctly, but
No, Jared Bednar saying, check him.
yeah, stand
He
that guy
loves
up at the blue
checking.
line.
Checking is
Don't
one of
let
his
him in.
favorite things. Just put a body on him and slow him down at least.
Yeah. Force guys to dump it in, put it behind you, and win a
Mhm.
race. Yeah.
Yeah. I think back, Meghan brought up the penalty kill. I think back to the preseason when we bumped into Andrew Cogliano and I asked him if he's getting the itch to come back. I feel like maybe right now he might be getting a little bit of an itch. Obviously, it's not a real solution, but I'm sure he's probably sitting there like, I could help, coach. I could help. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Meghan is crushing it right now. I think everything she said so far has been pretty on point.
Well, I was going to say, I also think that everything Meghan was just laying out is just great context to what we're looking at as well. I get that people are frustrated with some of the way some of these games have gone. Again, I have issues with last night that are aside from what Meghan was talking about. But that's the one thing that I say all the time. Like, we're not here to make excuses. We're not here to, carry water for anybody. But like, there's context to what we're looking at. And if you think the Avs look like a mess in their own end, you're right. There's a reason for that.
I think it's interesting too, because I like the side note of, and last night's game, there's even the differences in what we observed that weren't great. Like I saw a comment on the post game about Avs net front coverage, and it leads to, net front scrambles and chaos that are really difficult for Georgiev in particular. But in last night's game, 2 out of 3 of those goals aren't from net front scrambles. That doesn't mean the Avs are defending their net front well enough. I haven't liked their play behind the goal line. I think that's where,
Around
to your
the net.
point, yes, they're letting guys just circle around it, uncontested, especially behind the net. And when they're moving the puck in that way, they're able to set up and create time and space, and that's normally where you see a goal scored shortly after, but it's usually from a little bit of distance. So again, I have criticisms of how they've defended the net front, but these aren't born from net front scrambles, especially in last night's game. There are other issues at play there.
Yeah, I guess moving on to a little bit of a bright spot. I think Casey Middlestat's consistency has been unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the type of player that it's like, holy smokes, where would they be if they didn't have him right now? Like, forget even second line center, like just him as a player. How much worse could this be right now if you didn't have a player like Casey Middlestat able to come in behind the top guys and provide some extra juice? Like he's been like maybe their MVP so far. There's Nate and Cale and Miko, they're way out producing him, but the consistency from Casey and just being able to provide that secondary wave has been massive.
And it's been with whoever you put next to him.
Yes.
That's what I love so much about him. His versatility and his resilience, adaptability. No matter who he's playing with, he's finding ways to produce power play, 5v5. And I forgot the second thing I was going to say. It's provided a stabilizing force, though, for the Avs forward group where they've desperately needed one.
Indeed. Shout out to Casey Middlestat. Again,
Yep.
We've been doing that a lot this season so far, and hey, he deserves it.
I had Middlestat as the stabilizing force in the forward group, and Malinsky as a stabilizing force in the back end.
He was going to be who if you were ready to move on, I was going to shout out. I think Malinsky has done something very similar on the back end. The production hasn't been there the way that Casey has, but man, has he looked good.
So, question then. Last night's game, you look at some of the top guys absorbing big minutes, Cale Makar, Devon Taves, high or mid-20s. Sam Malinsky around, I don't want to say 13. Actually, I have it like right here. But his average has been around 14 minutes for Malinsky. Obviously, Makar and Taves in the 20s. Can he absorb more minutes? Can he help more? Is it a trust issue? Why aren't we seeing him utilized a little bit more?
I mean, we saw him switched. What was that against Ottawa? Skating with Devon. Like, one of the things that I think you have to give Jared Bednar credit for, and part of it's been out of necessity, but like he's playing to performance right now. Like, the guys who are getting minutes are the ones who are playing well. And I think if Malinsky continues to do what he's doing, he's just going to kind of force his hand. Like, again, if I don't want to bury Gerard too much. I
No,
think he's been good. Last night was a tough
that's not
night
where I'm
for him.
going. Yeah, that'd be sad.
But, like, again, if Sam Malinsky continues to play this way consistently, and you do have guys, Sam Girard, Josh Manson, whoever, that are playing up and down, I think Jared Bednar is going to continue to give Sam Malinsky the looks, as long as he continues to earn it.
Yeah, there's obviously something that Jared Bednar is not fully on board with Sam Malinsky and giving him trust, because 13 minutes, that's incredibly low. He played really well last night. I think he deserved a little bit more time on ice. And shoot, Cale Makar deserves a little bit less time on ice. The guy
Shave off a few minutes
Yeah.
in between Girard and Makar too, right? Like Girard finished with 20. Malinsky was right under 14 minutes. Just shave a couple minutes off the top of those two if you can.
Shave a minute off for each one. Let me ask you guys about Cale. I think Cale has played special in spurts thus far in this early season. I think he has looked at times like the Cale Makar that everyone knows. And I will even go as far to say I think there's been 2 games already where I'm like, those are some of his better games that we've seen. But he's had some ups and I guess, where are you guys at with Cale?
I'm 100% with you. I think it's been a bit of a roller coaster of a season for him. His highs have been really high,
Very
and his
high.
lows have been very low. So like a huge deviation between what you're seeing night to night with Cale Makar. Who knows exactly why? I mean, we talk about injuries, and Mark Rycroft pointed this out on the broadcast last night. It's like guys are constantly playing with something nagging them, and Cale Makar, considering the ice time he gets, other teams are kind of coming at him. I think some nights maybe he's getting nagged by his injuries that maybe exist or maybe they don't, but a little more than others. So I don't know. He kind of has to find a way to find a middle ground, maybe a little bit above the middle ground to keep moving forward in the season. But I'm with you. The highs have been high and the lows have been extra low. Uncharacteristic of him.
And I think back to the career points year, in a year that he had kind of a similar story of highs, lows, not always looking like himself. And it feels like he's on a similar path in that way, still a 10-game point streak, even in spite of some of these lower point games. I'm not sure how to view it, because I look at the games where he struggled and kind of how we talked about context earlier. I understand why he looks like he's struggling. And until this team gets a little bit healthier, because as funny as it sounds, like the back end's actually pretty complete. I still think, though, the lack of health to the forward group and issues with goaltending affects the back end.
Look,
and I think that's what we're seeing with Cale.
To that point, and that's a great call out. The Abs, like the Cale Makar Devon Taves pairing, is supposed to kind of be their secret weapon. We can roll them out there with different lines. And they can kind of be the offensive force behind that. If you throw them out there with a third or fourth line. But you're right. There is more defensive responsibility being put on and asked of Devon Taves, Cale Makar, the whole back end that is healthy, because you are missing so much of that defensive help up front. So I do think, look, there was a comment in here that said that Cale's played almost 50 minutes the last 2 games. That has to be considered. Even if it's not injuries, it's a lot of minutes to play in 2 nights. And I think they're harder, heavier minutes right now too. There is more being asked of your defenseman because you're missing so much defensive support up front. I really do. I think there's a lot of this that as the forward group gets healthy and they can play more to that identity, well, you don't need to roll Cale Makar out there for every D-zone faceoff, because you've got Val Nichushkin and Arturi Lehkonen out there, and you can saddle them with Girard and Manson and ease up on some of those minutes. So I think not only are his minutes going to be up right now, but I do think that they are, like I said, harder minutes.
Yeah. I mean, Cale Makar is a bit of a safety blanket for Jared Bednar. So he's going to use them with maybe some forward combos that he doesn't necessarily trust defensively. I think offensively, Cale Makar has been fine. right? I mean, he's obviously been putting up the points. His shots are pretty consistent with what they normally are. It's the defensive end. We got to see it cleaned up a little bit. Let's get to the super chat here. Ryan B, sorry if it's been discussed, but the Avs just look systematically better in front of Juice compared to Georgiev. Is there something there? So perfect time, perfect transition into the goalie conversation.
Thank you for the super chat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ryan.
Goalie conversation.
I think we've seen this before. To Ryan's point, for some reason, these guys play differently in front of one goalie versus another. I remember when Jonas Johansson first got to town, and everybody was like, "Oh, Jonas Johansson looks great," and it was because they would play a little bit tighter defensively. It's weird that it is such a thing. I mean, you would think, who cares who's behind us? We're going to play the exact same way. I don't know if they're more confident with Justus Annunen in there, or if it's a lack of confidence, but there is something different.
Well, and what's funny is that, like, not that this narrative changes, but the name does seem to constantly kind of be, because I feel like I remember this conversation with people last year with, doesn't it feel like the Avs play better in front of Georgiev than Annunen? And what I view it as is a lack of trust, and you end up doing stuff that you wouldn't normally do, trying to cover up for what you're perceiving as holes or places that they could get to the net. You're laying out to block a shot, sprawling on the ice when it's like, ooh, you would have never done that, and they waited for you to slide by, and now they walked in on a better chance. It's a bad example, but like that to me is how I perceived it last night. They were running around kind of scrambling in their own end, and I said, are they just, is the subconscious mindset like, well, we can't give up a shot? So they're doing things that are outside of their system to try to like desperation make plays. I don't know if what I'm saying is even making sense, but like that's how I perceive it. Not they choose to play better, in front of one guy, or more systemically tight in front of one guy. To me, it's just like it's got to be in the back of your head. Like, I guess you've always been a goalie, like coming up, like your goalie gives up a couple weak ones and you sit on your bench like, okay, well, I guess we can't give up any shots tonight. So suddenly you start doing stuff and you cheat on a play, or you pinch when you shouldn't.
Or, we've talked about it a lot, how we're not exactly comfortable with Justus Annunen's rebounds. You think the players don't know that? So they're going to say, okay, anytime a shot goes in, we're going to make sure to
box out,
get this rebound protected. Whereas with Georgiev, you don't necessarily have to do that. Now, is that enough to really make an entire team play differently in front of a goalie? Probably not, but I think it's a factor that's being considered among many others.
There's a couple interesting things. I have similar notes as to before when I did the little monologue. I do think they're playing better in front of Justus Annunen. I think some of it stemmed from them being in search of their first win of the season. So like they get the first win with Georgiev in net, and then 4 of that 5-game win streak, Annunen is the starter. I think there's a combination of them genuinely playing better in front of him, in search of wins, building some momentum from them. Because as we discussed earlier, they still haven't been great in their own end generally, but a lot of those starts earlier in the season that kind of account for some of those numbers are when Georgiev had the starts and Annunen comes in as relief. And so at least, 4 of those starts in this 10-game segment are solidly Annunen's. But what's interesting is they've played worse in front of him while shorthanded than they have Georgiev, but Annunen has just been the better goaltender. He has 3 power play goals against. Georgiev has, I want to say, 4. I didn't write it down for some reason. But Annunen's save percentage on the PK is .850. He's among the better goaltenders in the league while shorthanded, and he's faced some of the most shots. So he's just generally been better, even though the PK's actually been worse in front of him. Whereas you look at Georgiev, 667 save percentage on the PK. He's just not been very good while the team has been shorthanded. I looked at of starter or starter adjacent goaltenders with 5 starts minimum, 230 minutes played. That's around where Annunen is at. 14th overall goals saved above expected. Right now, Georgiev has the worst saves above expected in the league at -7.24. Just like side by side, Annunen has emerged as the better goaltender. He is genuinely just playing better, even though there are these parts of his game that kind of stand out as sour points. He's just played better, even though the team hasn't always played better in front of him, especially while shorthanded, was the point I kind of wanted to make, that he's also done some things well in his own right that have deserved him being kind of talked about in this as he emerged as the front runner.
Well, and the other part of it too, like it really goes hand in hand with how the goalie's playing versus how teams are playing. Because let's use the last 4 Annunen wins. What's different about those games versus what we saw last night? The Avs are playing with the lead. And there's a different way that you play when you're playing with the lead versus when you're trying to climb back into a game. And it has felt like for most of the Georgiev games, including the Anaheim one that they won, they're chasing early. They're immediately in a position where we've got to generate offense to get back into the game. We see stuff like that with teams like Vegas, with teams like the Islanders, with teams like Dallas, where playing with the lead is so critically important to what they do systems wise. And, typically you can see a team like Vegas or again, those teams I just listed, if they get behind in games, they can sometimes kind of get blown out. And you go from, oh man, how is that such a strong defensive team to, they kind of got run up on there. It's like, well, yeah, they were chasing the game. They're breaking their structure. They're not waiting for you to make mistakes. They're having to push pace a little bit. So again, I'm not saying that that's the only difference in, how they're playing, but when you step back and look at the Georgiev games versus the Annunen games in terms of who starts, the difference is the Avs are playing with the lead in these ones because they're getting some saves early. As for last night, you find yourself chasing the game again early in the first period.
I think too, like with Georgiev, we're going to probably break down. I don't know if we were going to go goal by goal, but you still wanted to see at least one more save in that first period. That would have changed the feeling around this game. I think they didn't have their legs / the mental capacity to really engage in the way that we needed to see them to. I didn't love, even though Annunen's close to the Ottawa game, but what I will say is there's a stark difference in Georgiev's body language and Annunen's body language. If I can see that as a casual observer, the team has to see that.
I don't know if I'd call you a casual observer. Maybe.
I'm not going to speculate like what that means to the team then. Yeah. Like the team has to at least take note of the difference in body language, and I'll go into it in a second, but that also probably influences how they play around him. To your point, they recognize maybe Annunen struggles with his rebounds, settling the puck in the crease there, so they're probably going to account for that in some way. But I overall feel like Annunen's body language is still so much more calm and collected in net. He presents his chest and pads to the puck, and he just appears a little bit more calm, like not as overreactive. I feel like Georgiev, you pointed this out, looks a little bit nervous. He's
spastic.
He's very spastic. Like it's overly movement. And so when he's trying to settle pucks, similarly, think he struggles with it as well. But it just feels so much more chaotic at all times. And I think that is, if it's observable to me, it's probably observable to the team.
Can we pause on this? Because I actually want your opinion on this. Because Megan and I were talking about it as we were walking through the halls last night after the game. On those goals last night, I'm trying to think if there's any of them that the first one he gets beat kind of clean. You don't love it. But the next two, I think it'd be easy on those next two to say, oh, well, that one hit a guy and changed direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one, it's a rebound, scramble in front of the net, doesn't get cleared out. And I think those are both legitimate points to make on both of them. But when I watch those replays, especially the first one, with the way that Annunen's playing, it's hard for me to not look at that and say, I think that one just hits Annunen. He's square, like Megan said, he's square. He's in the right spot. He's big. He's out on top of the paint, and he's tracking pucks. And he's in the right spot for a lot of saves. I don't think Annunen has been like outstanding. He's been very positionally sound. Then that third one, again, it's just the way that it hits Georgiev. He's reaching, no stick in his hand, and it drops right into the crease, and he's kind of out of position to find it. The shot came from, if you're looking at the net, the right side. He found himself like up against the far post. Like I'm just looking at those saying there are absolutely things that you can say not all on him. But as I watched those replays, I said, I cannot help but feel like someone that's a little bit calmer and maybe a little bit more positionally sound, at least one of those just finds him.
Yeah, it's a difference in skill sets. I also think confidence is a big issue right now. I think Georgiev is playing a little bit sucked back, which is something you do when you're lacking confidence. You try to do a little bit too much, which is kind of what you're explaining right there. He's really, to bring it to a forward term, he's gripping his stick too tight.
Yeah.
He's trying to do too much to say, no, guys, I am good. I promise you. Like, he feels the lack of confidence from the media. He feels the lack of confidence from his teammates. He's trying to prove everyone wrong. And in doing so, he might be doing a little bit too much. Yeah, Justus Annunen, he's bigger. He's more on angle. He's more fundamentally sound. Yeah, maybe that hits him just because of his sheer size and his sheer, skill at cutting down angles and challenging pucks. I think it's when rebounds happen, goalies have to scramble. That's where Georgiev, I think, excels over Annunen.
For sure.
But it's really just about different skill sets in two different guys. And right now, Georgiev's confidence is just shot.
Like, let's look at the second goal, the one that gets deflected. There was an angle on that replay that made it look like the puck was going to come to the net either way, and I'm not really sure what he was doing to begin with. But just giving him the benefit of the doubt, even that puck's going to his right, and he drops, and then he opens his 5-hole and reaches out and doesn't really know where it is. And that's, to me, like we talked about with Annunen last week, part of what makes him effective is he drops into that butterfly and he flares it out so far that he can sit there really solid. Not, no holes that at least he's presenting, and pucks just hit him.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I'm watching that last night, and I think it's exactly what you're saying. There's just so much jitter that Georgiev saw that puck come off, saying, "Ah! Oh, fuck. Damn."
Yeah.
And it squeaks right through him. And it's like, breathe.
Right.
Take a deep breath.
Exactly. That's what's going through his mind. Oh, it's deflecting on somebody. Let me do what I can to try to find it. And he didn't find it.
No.
Rather than, what you should do in that scenario is you attack where that puck's bouncing off of. So if he sees, oh, wow, this looks like it might hit this guy in the breezers, you got to go act as if he's
that
the
angle
shooter.
Down. Right.
Right.
And oh man, what was the other example that I was going to use? When you said attack the shooter again, that was just something, and I've lost my train of thought, so we can move on. But like that's just something that I noticed last night. Is it's just, when you can't find it. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Even going back to that Ducks game, that first goal that was a little controversial. Why does that even happen? Because he doesn't hear the whistle right away, so he starts fucking scrambling and looking around. And it's like, if you would have just stayed there, you had it.
Mm-hmm.
But he starts looking for it. And I think that's the part of what you're talking about, where he's just like, I gotta find this puck. I gotta do everything. And it's like, no, stop moving.
The Islanders game, the stick check on the Palmieri
Yes,
breakaway goal,
yes.
I was like, that was a little too much.
Yes.
Over aggressive, out of desperation, which in that situation is very understandable.
Sure.
But I think that maybe this is just kind of now a few things that point to where he's at in his head.
Well, and I'll even go a step further on that one. My issue with that one in particular was he did not commit. He waited too long. You saw him kind of like, should I go? I'm going to go. And it's like, you waited.
And what does that boil down to in your mind?
Confidence. I don't know if I can make it. I can make it. No, I'm not sure. Oh, I'm going to go for it. And then he gets a bad bounce. He gets the puck, but it hits a shin. And again, you make your own bounces. He hesitated on, should I go for it? Should I not? And by the time he made the decision, he earned the bounce that he got. And so I think you're right, man. And that's a great line to draw there, that there's just a lot of things pointing towards that.
And I think JJ's right. It's all centered in confidence and a lack of confidence.
And I think Jesse's right. But yeah, exactly. And he's digging himself a deeper hole. It's tougher. He's not getting games. That's not helping him. The lack of consistency in play is just going to keep digging him a deeper hole, and then giving up goals like he gave last night, just going to keep digging a deeper hole. I still think he is the better goalie. I could, be making a lot of people mad by that. You guys could disagree with me. if you want. But I still think Georgiev is the better of the two goalies. He's just in a really deep rut right now, and it's only going to get deeper until he can prove to the team, prove to Coach Bednar that he deserves more trust.
His issue right now isn't his ability; it's the consistency and confidence.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is for Alexander Georgiev. And unfortunately, you know this better than any of us sitting on this set right now. That might be more than 50% of goaltending is those two things I just listed.
Mm-hmm.
Your physical ability might actually be the least important of those three things.
Yeah, I agree with you.
What do you think the team does now that Kakinen's an option?
I think they're gonna get a look at him, at Kakinen. Like I think they're going to take a.
I don't think they make this decision now with the Eagles playing at home this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that means they're planning to play him either Tampa or Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I was scared of is Justus Annunen getting some momentum, building a lot of trust, and in coach's eyes, being the number one, the guy you need to lean on right now, and then shitting the bed. He kind of did that in the third period against Ottawa.
Yeah.
So I think maybe there's a little bit of backpedaling there for, okay, maybe he's not the guy. But what I was a little nervous about is Justus Annunen showing well against these tough teams and then them going back to him against a Tampa Bay and then absolutely getting shelled.
Well, and Jerry Bednar said they aren't naming a starter. They're not naming a starter for a while, is what he said. I do think Alexander Georgiev has lost his starting job. I think he can reclaim it, but I do not think that right now he is considered the number one. I think it is a true open competition in net for the Avs. I think they're going to take a look at Kakinen this week. I do not think necessarily that they're going to send Georgiev down in the next 2 weeks, put him on waivers or anything like that. But I do think that he's officially playing for minutes.
Mm-hmm.
He's officially in a competition for playing time. And sure, you could talk me into if this goes on long enough and suddenly Annunen and Kakinen are just, rattling off good game after good game. Could the Avs do that when they get to the cap crunch part of this season? Sure. I'm not going to say anything isn't possible. The Oilers did it with Jack Campbell. So sure, it could happen, but he still has a chance to earn this net back. But I do think if you were to truth serum Jared Bednar and you ask him, do you have a number one goaltender? He'd say no.
I think I want to frame it this way too. Like, let's say over the next span of, I don't know, pick a number divided by 3. Each goaltender has almost equal in performance. Like it's very, very good. And they're all kind of equal. I feel like Georgiev would maybe have more trust.
Yep.
What do you think?
I think 100%.
I agree. 100%.
Obviously, you would prefer for someone to separate in that. That would make it a little bit easier. But I think right now it feels like Georgiev has soured so much in the team's eyes, front office eyes, because of this lack of confidence leading to a lack of trust now. Can it be something he comes back from? I think that through performance, it is. He just has to play extremely well and show consistency in doing it, which is really challenging for him right now.
Well, and in the process, coach has to go to him, which means Annunen has to give him a reason to go back to Georgiev.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is, it's tough. You're not going to win the starter job back at practice or at morning skate.
No.
It's going to be in game.
Which is going to take some time. That's the other kind of point here is they need to see what they have in Kakinen. So that means getting him in some games, which means Annunen and Georgiev aren't playing. You have to keep Annunen kind of fresh, though, so he's not sitting idly for too long, but you also don't want to have Georgiev sitting idly for too long. I think it's going to take some time for us to really see enough body of information to even start talking about who's the starter.
For me, and now the one wrinkle that does get thrown into this, and Gabe's ETA is a major factor in this. I think they're going to carry 3 for as long as they possibly can.
Right.
And I would even go as far to say, for me personally, I am a huge advocate. You have to have a number one going into playoffs. To drop the puck in the playoffs, you have to have a starter. No team has ever won a Stanley Cup with a true 50-50, 1A, 1B. We're just going with whoever's giving it the best chance. No, you can't have that in the playoffs. It's been shown time and time and time and time and
Swayman
time again.
Hallmark, Boston.
Right.
Well, I think about Matt Murray and Marc-Andre Fleury.
But that's the thing. That wasn't the competition, though. It was Matt Murray, and he was hurt, so Fleury played. And then as soon as Fleury faltered, they said, we're going back to our number one.
True.
So, but does it help to have the peace of mind to have a guy like Fleury as your backup? Absolutely. But if it were me and you're not having to worry about money, I would run a true competition from now till the end of the season. And whoever is your best goalie, that's who you go with going into the playoffs. This is our guy. Doesn't matter how much they're making. Doesn't matter who they are, how long they've been here, where they were drafted, how'd you get them, whatever. If Kakinen comes in and he's the best guy, doesn't matter if you got him off the waiver wire. He's the best guy. If Annunen comes in, doesn't matter if he's a rookie. He's the best guy. If Georgiev is the best guy, doesn't matter what he did at the beginning of the season. He has shown he is the best option of the three. That's what I would do if you can do that. And if you can't do that all the way to the end of the season, I would take it from 3 as long as I can. Then I whittle it down to 2. These have been my 2 best. And you go from there.
People squirm at the possibility of this being the final 3 options for the Avs in the playoffs. Like, a lot of people squirm at the thought of, let's say Justus Annunen plays really well through the rest of the year. Okay, he's the Avs starter. Do you feel comfortable with that in the playoffs? I think what's tough is the way the Avs are constructed, they're not going to have a clear starter the way that other teams get to. They don't get the Connor Hellebuck experience. And I wish they could. It's just not the way this team is constructed. They want to carry top-heavy forwards. They want the Rantanen and the McKinnon. They also want a Val Nichushkin one day, and they want a Landeskog one day. It's just hard, I think, with the way the Avs are constructed. And so I don't know if I'm ready to squirm. I think I just need the season to play out for me to really decide how I feel about it. If come game 82, we're like Justus Annunen is the clear starter. Maybe we're doing backflips and cartwheels over it. Maybe not JJ, but or Georgiev. You know what I mean? Like, people are really squirming. It's like all 3 of these names do not induce excitement in a lot of people right now.
Well, and to your point about you don't get there's so few goaltenders in the league that you can reliably feel good about night in, night out. And even Connor Hellebuck just got bounced out of the playoffs, giving up 5+ goals every single night as the higher seeded team. So it's hard because I sit there and I say, okay, could you find a dance partner? Could you find a way to make a move? We talked about Anaheim, or maybe you and I talked about Anaheim when we were there at that game, and say, okay, John Gibson is, by all reports, pretty much ready to come back. They're just not working him in. They've got Dostal there who they're rolling with.
He's played so good.
He's played really well. So, I don't know. We were having that conversation of could you put together a package where Anaheim, you're just trying to get what you can get for Gibson at this point. Would you get him to eat half, take Georgiev back? You'd obviously have to throw in other stuff. Georgiev and them eating half is to make the money work. But okay, let's say you do that. And I know people have mixed feelings on Gibson, where he's at now in his career versus whatever. But okay, you went out and you made a move for roughly the same money if you can make it all work and all that. There's no guarantee that John Gibson or anyone is going to come in and be like, oh, all right, problems are solved, all good now.
Doesn't make me want to do backflips and cartwheels any more than the 3 names that are in contention right now. Nothing against Gibson. I like him too. It's just, I don't know.
It's just a different name.
Yeah, it's just a different name. It's not so strong that it changes things for me. I don't know that there is a goaltender that could come in externally that would make me feel that way, to be honest with you.
Well, right. Not one that you could reasonably try to go out
and
acquire. Yeah.
The Hellebucks of the world are not possible for the Avs.
And what you've got right now, and hoping that they can follow the process and improve, you'd really be hoping for the same thing by bringing, again, pick a name that's not Vasilevsky, Shesterkin, or Hellebuck. Pick a name. And your hope goes from, man, I hope they can play better, to, I hope these guys can adjust to the system quick enough and catch on and be effective. It just,
Did Kakinen get a start over the weekend?
Both.
Both?
They didn't win their games, but he played well.
Good.
I think they're going to give him a look. He had a stall set up last night in Ball Arena. I think he's going to get a chance. And like I said, I'm not expecting to see Alexander Georgiev's name on waivers. Crazier things have happened. I'm not expecting that. I do think this is a 3-person competition. What I do think will be interesting is if tomorrow or in Nashville or whatever, we see a Annunen Kakinen tandem going in. A full night off for Georgiev, I think would be a little bit interesting man, I'd love to know what that conversation is, right?
Yeah, like how do you repair a goalie's confidence, but you also need to get 2 other guys in net?
Right. And that's why I think last night, while I don't think it was his fault that they lost that game, that was a disappointing night for Georgiev because he really needed however we want to feel about the opponents that Annanen's played against or, what happened in the Ottawa game. Like the numbers are the numbers for those 4 games for Annunen. He played well. Georgiev needed to match or do better than that, and he couldn't find a way to. 3 goals against in the first period.
Cool. Well, I guess let's transition to the 10-game segment we were going to talk about. It's a little late in the show. I didn't realize our conversation would go that long, but it was a great conversation, so I enjoyed it. Let's start with Jared Bednar's quick little comments. We all knew it's not a secret to us that Jared Bednar breaks the season into 10-game segments, but he was asked about it last night, and here was his response.
Do we have that queued up? There it is. Nope. There it is.
Jared, 10th game. Do you break things up in chunks for the season when you evaluate things?
Yeah, 10-game segments for us. We look at it after 5, but 10-game segments is how we like to go because it's a big enough sort of sample size to put the analytics together and show you what you're doing well and show you what you're not doing well. And, the reality of it is you kind of helps you stay on track too, regardless of what your record is, right? Like you need 12 points every 10 games. You get 2 games at the end of the year to play with to pick up some points if you're fighting for standings. And so we finished this one 5-5. Starting 0-4, we're going a good run. Tonight would have been the one that gets you the 12 points, but we don't get there, so we're a little short. We'll have to make it up someplace else.
So let's get into this first 10-game segment.
You dress as Prime. I actually kind of forgot that while we were watching. I looked back over and you were looking at me and I could see the headset. And it just made me laugh.
It's a good costume. Yeah, before the show started, I told you guys, A, wear Halloween costumes, and B, pick out some stuff that has stood out to you through the first 10 games to maybe help tell the story about what's going on, what has happened through the first 10. Megan seems the most prepared, so we'll start with her.
I'm always prepared.
Well, and to be honest, I've shared kind of my huge 2, which was the issues they're having in their own end. I love that Jesse added the context of how the absences of defensive-minded forwards has contributed to that. Goaltending was the other, and just kind of this counter of they haven't exactly played great in front of Justus Annunen the whole time either. He's just performed better in net. The other thing has been the strength of the power play. Feels like an easy one, maybe a silver lining. I think that's why there was frustration in the Chicago game that with 2 power play opportunities, they couldn't capitalize on them because it has been a top 3 power play in the league. Despite some highs and lows to start the season, it's kind of been their constant. And you've had players like McKinnon and Makar leading that charge, lead the league in power play points, 8 points apiece. And I think it's helped to extend the season opening point streak that they're on right now, which is impressive from both of those players. Ross Colton highlight there as well. Casey Middlestat, also just such a great fit there. With Artturi Lehkonen's check-in happening today and the hope that he'll be joining them soon, that top unit does suddenly get a lot better. It kind of sucks that Ross Colton is going to miss some time, but it makes sort of the fit then a little easier to plug in where Lehkonen might be. I've seen some people curious to how they'll utilize Lehkonen in his return. Does Middlestat become bumper guy? Lehkonen go back to kind of net front rover? Just in the practice that we saw, they kept Casey Middlestat there and put Lehkonen in the bumper spot. I don't know if that persists, but wanted to ask you guys what you thought about it and just the power play generally.
If Lehkonen beats Colton back, unfortunately, they will probably have no choice but to keep Middlestat in that bumper spot as well. But I mean, the power play ties a little bit in with what I was going to talk about, and just they've struggled in their own end defensively. I think they've done a lot of good things systematically on the offensive side of the puck, primarily on the power play. I think the power play has been really, really good. And it, when you get healthy, it should give you a little bit more faith in what your second unit can do.
Well, and doesn't it kind of speak to, all right, so Cale Makar's had some off nights, but Cale Makar's been sick on the power play. In this environment with the top guys, you're like, they're still top guys, right? I know away from the man advantage, maybe they don't always look or feel like it. Maybe it's because all these other troubles in the team game are bogging us down. But I think the power play also serves as a reminder to us that the top guys are still best in the league for a reason. And there's some silver lining and optimism there for what this team is capable of when it does start to get healthier. And those top guys can just be that.
With Ross Colton in the lineup, it would be tough to take him out of that first power play just because of how well he's done. They got kind of lucky that they don't have to make that decision right now, but I think Artturi Lehkonen can step in and do a lot of the same things. It just depends on his success rate. I think watching the games has probably helped Artturi Lehkonen see what's working, see why Ross Colton's having some success, and he can kind of replicate that. But again, the shooting percentage that Ross Colton's working with right now is tough to beat. Does that eventually regress? Maybe, maybe not. Does Lehkonen come in and have a similar success? Probably not. So I think it's kind of an interesting conversation there between Lehkonen and Colton if they had those options. But you don't have those options right now. And I think putting Lehkonen in that bumper spot, he'll probably do just fine. What happens when Colton comes back? I'd hate for him to lose that position when he's done so well in it.
I mean, that's a good problem to have. You know, oh no, we got too many players playing well. Like that's a problem that you'll take. Yeah,
and it'd be a great way to bolster PP2 with either of those guys on it, because we know PP2 needs some help. But I said it before a couple weeks ago or a couple shows ago when it was just you and I. You'd hate to reel back Ross Colton and suddenly reel back his production a little bit just because you're getting bodies, but it's kind of a decision that has to be made. I mean, it's kind of a rock and a hard place there for Jared Bednar.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I'm with Megan. You know, a lot of the diving in that I did and looking at the numbers, I kept coming to the same conclusion that the goaltending has just been upsetting.
Yeah.
You know, you could look at anything you want. You know, you could point to the defensive structure. You could point to zone entries as we did. At the end of the day, the goaltending just hasn't been good enough. I think Megan brought it up. The team's 8th in high danger chances, which is pretty good. In that same vein,
well,
they're second to last in save percentage.
In like allowing the most.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're.
See, in what I looked up, I have them in all scenarios. They're 7th best at high danger chances.
Like creating them?
No, at
disallowing
Suppressing them.
Yeah.
Was yours 5-on-5?
That's a great question. I want to say it was because I usually look at it that way.
5-on-5, yeah.
I went all situations because I don't like to just keep it in the 5-on-5 box. So goaltending's been awful. I think another thing I found was Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen aren't shooting as much as they normally do. I think it translates because they both have more assists than they normally would. But last year through 10 games, Mikko Rantanen had 37 shots on goal, while Nathan MacKinnon had 50. Right now, one of them was 14 against the San Jose Sharks. Right now, Mikko Rantanen's sitting at 28, while Nathan MacKinnon's only at 36, which is interesting because the offense hasn't been the problem whatsoever. Nathan MacKinnon is putting points up better than he was through the first 10. If we remember last year through the first 10, he was kind of struggling to really get points on the board. He's doing just fine this year, and that's with less shots. So allowing Nathan MacKinnon to kind of make more plays, Mikko Rantanen make more plays, that's great. But I'd love to see them shoot the puck at the same rate that we're used to from those two guys.
Well, and it's hard because there's been multiple games where I felt like the Avs have overpassed. And then I look at what we were talking about earlier with usage and, putting so much on those top guys. I'm with you. You want to, like, your elite shooters shoot the puck.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that, and this is going to tie in a little bit with one of the things that I was going to talk about. I like the fact that those guys are distributing right now, that they're using their powers for good. You know what I mean? Like they're lifting up other players. And truthfully, like I'm looking at this first 10 game segment through the scope of like, where did they end up versus what the expectation was? And I think when you look at it like that, I think there's a lot of positives to take out of these first 10 games. I struggled a little bit to read too far into what they are doing from an analytics standpoint, good and bad. They have some good analytic numbers as well. Jared Bednar has reminded us constantly. There's a lot of good things that they are doing. But to me, it's like, this isn't even the team. This isn't even the team.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that they're doing stuff, the way they're defending, the way they're possessing the puck, the way that they're suppressing opportunities against is going to look vastly different, you hope, in about 2 months. And so it's just interesting. And I like the fact that those top players are finding a way to get others involved. They're making the players around them better.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my biggest takeaway. This isn't the team. This isn't even the team.
Mm-hmm.
And the goalies have sucked.
I
think both of those combined is kind of what's brought us to this. One last thing, through 10 games last year, they allowed 21 goals.
Yeah, I know this isn't good.
Right now they're at 41.
Yeah.
20 more than last season.
Here's the funny part, though. Because last season they started, was it 6-0 or 7-0? Doesn't matter. 6. Yeah, 6-0. I don't think they played well in those first 6 games last year.
No, if you remember, it was Alexander Georgiev bailing them out, which is kind of my thought going back to the goalie conversation. Last year, he had a really good start to the season. This year, he had a really bad start to the season. Last year, he eventually kind of went back to who he was. This year, he's probably just going to go back to who he was. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of two opposites that eventually are going to meet in the middle anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think that's the problem with Georgiev is, that there's an average starter in there, average, whatever. But it's like, we just don't know when we're going to get that.
Yeah.
On any given night, we don't know if that's going to show up or not. My 2 things.
Yes, please.
My first one, and this was a little bit me getting in a dig. Development and systematic preparation. I think there's, we've talked a lot on the show about there's been breakdowns in the system. I look at this roster right now. You have had 4 regular season NHL debuts. You've had 3 first NHL goals. And with the exception of Cal Ritchie, who isn't eligible for the AHL, all of those guys have come up through your system. We're talking to Jared Bednar right now about what they're doing with these off days, what they're doing with all these optional days. And he is stressing to us, it's video work and we're focusing on systems. There are so many new faces, so many new bodies, so many players coming from other organizations, so many players coming from different levels of hockey. And the fact that on the whole, over these 10 games, I think the Avs have put a decent product on the ice, good enough to go 5-5, to go perfectly average, right? I think that is a massive testament to the work that they are putting in, that the coaching staff is drilling in behind the scenes to make sure that this real ragtag group of players that they've got is at least semi-reflecting Avalanche hockey. And again, I mentioned the development piece. For as much of a hard time as this organization gets, you have 4 players that you have folded into the start of this season and have asked a lot of them. Nikolai Kovalenko has played on the top line 2 games in a row. Like, you're asking a lot of them, and you are getting legitimate NHL play out of it. I know Cal Ritchie, kind of faded off, and they decided to, send him back. He got his first NHL goal. He contributed in meaningful minutes. He played on special teams. Like, they've done a good job getting the most out of the group that they've got. And I want to make sure that they get credit for that, because they're skipping stuff on the ice right now to make sure that players understand what they are even supposed to be doing out there.
Well, and that can speak a little bit to the mental fatigue that Meghan Angley brought up, when we're dissecting the Chicago game. I mean, there's so many things that they're trying to pump in these guys' brains that their legs are moving 100 miles per hour. Their brains are moving 200 miles per hour right now, just trying to make sure they make the right decision and stick in the roster spot that they are currently in. Like you said, it's performance-based with Jared Bednar. So that adds some pressure on their decision-making, that they want to make sure they make the right decision and, think about it over and over and over and make it again.
Right. Sorry, you were pointing. I don't know if you were going to say.
No, I didn't think about it, but Benner talks about all the time how it is a balance and trying not to overwhelm the players with too much information. And I think that because of how this year has started with so many new faces needing to be brought into the fold, to your point, I think that is part of the challenge. And I think it can get hard game by game too, trying to prep them for their opponents and what to expect, and also add into the things that they didn't do well from the game before that they need to focus on and work on then going into that next game. I do imagine that it's been a lot, especially because they start the year losing. So that's just a lot of feedback, I think, game by game to be getting, instead of, you're doing a lot of the right things, keep it up. I think that's just a lot more video work and sit downs and feedback than ever, because they started losing.
And the players that you've had whose roles have changed even within these 10 games. Like, there are players who are being asked to do something very different than what they were being asked to do going into the season opener.
We joked about Ivan last night, but boy, is this probably more than he bargained for. I don't doubt that he's complaining. I don't doubt that he's not complaining about it for a second, but he gets bumped to the second line, gets on the top power play unit with Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen. Like, that's probably more than he ever imagined in his first NHL season. Game. Yeah.
Right. Like, he was hoping to make the team, and now it's like, hey, go out there and collect a perfect pass from Nathan McKinnon. Don't bobble it or he's going to yell at you. And it's like, holy smokes. And so again, I want to make sure that we do give being realistic with the situation this team is in. I do. I think the development of young players, in addition to the way that they're getting these guys prepared night in, night out, I think needs to be marked, because they are a 500 team after starting 0-4 with as many injuries as they have. It's not something to turn your nose up at. My other word for these first 10 games, because I was really it's patience. I think Jared Bednar has shown an incredible amount of patience in these first handful of games. Again, for an organization and a coaching staff that is often criticized by doing the safe thing, Jared Bednar has shown in several different areas that he is willing to stick with something till it either gets better or till they make the decision, we can't keep going with this. Alexander Georgiev got the first 4 starts of the season because they were committed to him getting right. It would have been really easy to pull the plug on him right away. Get Annan in there, start swapping starts on these guys. Cal Ritchie, I think, is another one. They worked really hard to make that work. And eventually it's got to the point where they said, we can't do this. I think it would have been easy for them to see him look a step or two behind after those first couple games. You lose them. We need to get someone. We need to get TJ Tynan up here. He's played in the NHL before. They stuck with it. He rewards them with a goal, and there's a lot of valuable experience. Then Justus Annunen. It would have been easy to go to him in that first game and then immediately, hey, that was a good game. We want to see what Kakinen's got. No, they said, hey, that was a good game. We're rewarding you with another one. And he built on it and built on it and built on it. And I just think that starting 0-4 organizationally, there was probably a lot of temptation to do something, knee-jerk reaction, call someone up, trade for someone, sign a guy to, get Belmar back on the phone. We need him in the line. Like, there probably was a lot of temptation to do stuff like that, but the Avs are sticking with it, with the long-term view of what this season has the potential to be, like you were pointing out earlier, and they're saying we're sticking with what we got, and we're going to roll with the punches. We're going to play our young guys. We're going to move guys up the lineup, and as we get guys back, our hope is that that's going to add to strength down roster, because we have talked to these guys about larger responsibilities. We have thrown these guys into situations they maybe weren't prepared for, but we've done it through preparation, through coaching, and through sticking with our process. And I just think that those are the hallmarks of a championship team that is not rattled or flustered by circumstances and changing situations that are outside of their control. They are focused on what they can control. And I think the patience that they've shown, while I get it can be frustrating for folks sometimes and even confusing to us in certain instances, going back to Georgiev over and over again to start the season, there's a method to all of that madness. And I think the fact the Avs came out of a 10-game stretch in which they started 0-4, 5-5, is a testament to the fact that they stuck with their process.
And I think if they win last night and it's a 6-game win streak, we have a little bit different tone today.
Totally.
And, I think it's a lot more positive and a lot more like, wow, when this team finally does get healthy, imagine what they're going to be capable of. There's going to be blips throughout the season. Hopefully that 10-game segment that's now behind us is one of the worst 10-game segments, if not the worst of the season. And they can just keep building off of what they've done, because, teams definitely get better as the season progresses.
I really want to see Lehkonen and Drouin come back soon, because something about Ross Colton being hurt really took the wind out of my sails. I think that's why it made the next glimpse ahead at the next 10-game segment look a little grim. It's like they need some help, though. They need some reinforcement.
Yeah, they're not getting much help from the schedule, like Jesse pointed out. I think they have 2 days off after Tampa Bay, 2 games off after Nashville, and then they're basically every other night for the rest of the month. I think they get another 2 nights somewhere in there.
And then December is brutal too. December is brutal. It's basically every other night all month.
And sprinkle in some back-to-backs in there each month as well.
So, that is the other, that I will remind Avs fans, that is the other very honest reality of this, is they're skating with, yes, 3 high-end, top tier players. But the bottom half of that lineup, that's a roster that you can't have super, super high expectations for. I think he puts it outside the hood completely.
Does he?
I think so.
Let me work on it. Only for cold days, though.
Right. Which is tomorrow's supposed to be, by the way.
Do I look like Coach
I
Prime?
don't know what this posture is. That's not a very prime posture, but yeah, just relax a little bit.
I hurt my neck working out the other day.
Oh, no.
It's not your hip, it's your neck. If it's not your neck, it's your foot. If it's not your foot, it's your
36.
back. What do you play for the Avs?
Good one. Longer show. Anything else you guys want to say that hasn't been said? We've said a lot today.
Megan? Angeli?
No.
I'm bummed that I didn't get the memo in time.
Yes,
What
fine. That was my
would you
fault.
have
It's
dressed as?
I've got a great looks like you're riding on the shoulders of a gnome costume.
I love those type of costumes.
That's a really good
Those are
one.
Freaking funny.
Yeah.
My favorite one is the one where it looks like you've been
Abducted
taken
by an alien? Yes,
Yes.
dude.
Are they a
so
little
good.
bit inflated?
Mine isn't.
The alien
but
one
the
is.
alien
Oh,
one
okay,
is.
okay.
Yeah. I've got another good go-to one. I've also got a Bob Ross get up.
Oh man, you've got some good ones.
Yeah. Hannah's got a costume bin at home.
That's where I pulled this out of.
That's where I got this.
Yeah.
This actually came with a priest costume I had many moons ago.
So much funnier that you're using it for that. I've got another one too. That's been a nice, just easy. You can throw it on and you're good. But I probably would have done the gnome one.
That would have been so good.
Yeah,
You
that
could
would've been good.
wear it to morning skate.
Well, I have one more thing. I hope everybody has a happy and safe Halloween
Very spooky too.
and a spooky Halloween.
It's some spooky.
Don't overdo it on the scary movies. You'll have nightmares. I did it. I'm not a scary movie guy.
What'd you watch?
I don't. My wife's super into scary shit, so I was been watching a couple of them with her, and I had nightmares. And I'm like, this is why I don't do it. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. We'll be
Bye,
back
everyone.
Friday,
Bye.
and yeah, enjoy the Avs game tomorrow night. See you later.